Good afternoon, everyone. Let's get started. My name is Ali Abedi. I'm Vice Chancellor for Research at UW-M. I would like to thank everyone for being here today and welcome to UW-M. The topic of today's panel is at the intersection of national security, innovation, workforce development, and academic research. And I think it's more important than ever that because of all these recent changes in the world in terms of competition in technology, especially in defense, we need to act a little bit faster. For many decades, the collaboration between industry, DoD, and universities has drive some of the most transformative advances in science and technology, from early computing and internet to breakthroughs in materials, medicine, and even AI. I think today, when we are talking about universities, we need to understand universities are not just centers for learning. Especially a research-one university like UW-M, we consider ourselves to be engine of discovery and innovation and contributors to the DoD and industry, especially the way we are located here in the middle of Milwaukee, southeastern Wisconsin. UW-M can serve as an R&D hub to bring DoD and industry together. DoD is also not just a defense organization. DoD is one of the largest research supporters in the world, right? So many different kind of research can be done through the DoD type of research. We have very unique facilities at UW-M through some of our campuses and some of our facilities. We have great faculty, industry, participants, etc. And I'm very excited to see a very distinguished panel of speakers today to dive deep into this area. So with that, I would like to invite President of WisPolitics.com, Jeff Myers, to start the panel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chancellor. Anyway, I'm Jeff Myers from WisPolitics.com. We also run WisBusiness.com. We're part of the State Affairs Network. That's a nonpartisan news network that goes all the way from Massachusetts to California. And every presidential swing state except one, so we need to get Nevada in the fold. But if you're not familiar with stateaffairs.com or wispolitics.com, look us up on the web and you can find out about us. So I want to thank UW-Milwaukee for being partners with us in these series of events that we're doing. I think we're off to a great start, love the topics, and we're very pleased to be part of the effort. Now, we also do events. This is part of our Milwaukee event series, of which UW-Milwaukee is a co-sponsor. The other sponsors are the Medical College of Wisconsin. We're going to do an event there on May 5th, AI and the healthcare workforce. Spectrum News, the Wisconsin Transportation Builders Association, and HBS Wisconsin. So, now that I've got that commercial out of the way, I'm going to introduce your moderator, Yolanda Medina. She's a native of Waukesha, and she's an Air Force, I screwed up, a Marine Corps vet. Marine Corps, no, I say that because I have a niece and a nephew who are both in the Air Force, so I'm sorry, I apologize, but a Marine Corps vet. She came to the She is the director of Military and Veterans of the Military and Veterans Resource Center. She came to the center at UW-Milwaukee in 2018. She co-chairs the Veterans Advisory Council to the Chancellor, sits on the Chancellor's Council for Hispanic Serving Initiatives at UW-M, works with the UW-M chapter of Wisconsin Women in Higher Ed, and is a leader of the Staff Engagement and Development Committee in Student Affairs. So please welcome Marine Corps veteran Yolanda Medina.
Thank you, sir. That'll be noted on your employee evaluation. Well, it is my honor to introduce the panelists and moderate some of the questions that we're going to be asking. So I got to make sure that I have this in the right order here, because I got it wrong before. So we're going to start with, I apologize, Major General Litinsky.
Or Ernie.
Ernie, it's such a, once you're in, it's hard not to give everybody rank all the time. He is the co-chair of the Wisconsin Defense Industry Council, president of the RBP Chemical Technology. He's a seasoned operations and leadership professional with nearly 3 decades of experience driving supply chain excellence and strategic growth. As president, I've got some names here mixed up over here, and I apologize for that. But is that your bio still? I had my student worker do this.
Let me help out.
Yes.
There. So, yeah, I work for RBP Chemical.
Yes.
I'm president there. We're trying to get in defense a little bit, but we do stuff for printed circuit boards, semiconductors, and then implantable things in the body. My other career, I was in the military, 10 years of active duty, 32 years total.
Yes.
And I've been an operator, so like on tanks and stuff like that, and a manufacturing rat. Thanks. How's that, Yolanda?
That's perfect. Now my student staff is going to get an evaluation update, but I shouldn't have given it to her. Anyhow, so we'll move on to Dr. And do I have to call you Rob too? Rob Kushner. Kusner, yes. He is the Joanne and Richard Grigg Professor at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering. He leads the Center for Sustainable Electrical Energy Systems, SEAS for short, and leads both the Industry and University Collaborative Research Center and Grid Connected Advanced Power Electronic Systems, or GRAPES, as an initiative originally established through the National Science Foundation grant in partnership with the University of Arkansas and the University of South Carolina. He joined the university in 2014 and has 24 years of industry experience specializing in design of power electronics equipment, generators, and electrical distribution systems. That's a lot. So, and let me go on to Derek Van Zydem. He serves as president and site lead at Leonardo DRS, a leading U.S. defense technology company delivering advanced systems for national security and allied forces. He oversees site operations and strategic initiatives, driving excellence in manufacturing, program execution, and customer engagement to deliver mission-critical solutions. He joined the Leonardo DRS in November of 22, following his role as Vice President of Program Management at Ultra Electronics. He holds a bachelor's degree in electrical and electronics engineering from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and an MBA from W.P. Carey School of Business. Okay, great. And please add anything more to your bio that we don't have on paper.
Nothing to add, just a correction. I'm not the president, I'm the vice president. My boss might take issue
Okay,
with
we
that.
gave you a promotion. Okay, we'll
Yeah,
let
I got
your
a
staff know.
promotion. Yes.
So this is going to be pretty informal. It's going to be a discussion, not, what do we say? Not a news interview or anything of that kind. So we're going to start off right away so we can make good use of our time. I understand, Ernie and Derek, you attended DIBCON 26, and we'd like a little update on how you believe that has affected Wisconsin or your work with the subject that we're talking about now. Either one can go ahead and start. And tell us what DIBCON is.
I attended the panel last week at DIBCON. It was very informative. We were talking mostly about how we increase the supply base and the challenges that the supply base faces, so especially smaller businesses breaking into the DoD acquisition system, and how larger businesses or medium businesses such as Leonardo DRS can help support that. Then we got to have some interesting conversations about, if we had one wish, what would we change in the system? Some of that is already being pushed through the current administration, trying to refine the acquisition system or increase the speed of the acquisition system, but there's still some challenges that we need to address.
Great.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was not able to attend,
you were not.
but my co-chair, I'm going to call him for WDIC, attended, and I think it's a lot of what you said, Derek. The big challenge is, and it's domestically, is exactly that, from what he said. How do you get a small business without being a sub, how do you get them to be a sub-supplier and bring them into the value chain while moving through all the barriers to entry that exist with everything from your cybersecurity, and I think that was touched upon as well, to all the regulatory and everything that you need and may not have the resources for. So I think we'll talk about this a little bit more as we get into the panel. But yeah, you're right on from the notes I got. Thank you. Thank you for being there.
So then I'm going to go ahead and use your question since it kind of leads into the introduction that they gave. So what role do you think the state or federal government can do to support this in a greater way?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we are hoping that the new acquisition approach that the Department of War is taking will be successful. It is intended to accelerate the supply base. It's intended to expand the supply base. But that intent hasn't been fully rolled out through the rules and regulations that the businesses need to follow. So it's still somewhat of a TBD what will actually happen. We, as a tier 2 supplier, are doing everything we can to find additional suppliers, second sources, things like that to bring the process forward. We have a clear demand signal from the Navy and the shipyards as far as products we're concerned with, that they want to accelerate. They want to take things that used to take 3 years and they want to do it in 1 year or less. So to do that, we need to be a strong supplier to them. We need our suppliers to be strong suppliers to us. And when I say strong, I mean able to provide product that meets the requirements on time, and with a quality level that we don't have to question. So those kinds of things, those kinds of demands, it's hard I will say, for a company that's used to running a commercial business to make that kind of switch, because there is a cost, as Ernie noted, that needs to be absorbed.
Yeah, I'll add on to that a little. And there's a discussion, so I'm going to be frank. So I talked to a couple folks, but we've got a technology that we came up with for printed circuit boards that will make a signal go faster through a printed circuit board, so the electrons are going through quicker. Usually when you put circuit boards on top of each other, and sorry for the backstory, you gotta like press them and etch them. So you're creating like ridges. When that signal goes through, it's taking more time to go through because it's going up and down. And as Doc here probably knows, you get signal loss as well. The electrons come off. So this is how bureaucratic it is, and I'll be open. I'm a retired 2-star general. I went to Army Futures Command, the 4-star, down in Austin, Texas. It tried to get in the system. There's incubators and all kinds of things for good ideas. We failed, and I did it outside of my uniform, right? Because I can't have conflicts of interest. But it was just so hard to get an audience for small businesses. And a lot of times what you have to do, and we don't have it in this state, and Wade will tell you that in the back here coming from Madison, you got to go to one of the primes or a tier 1 or tier 2 and piggyback on them. And we just don't have that here in the state of Wisconsin. We don't have Lockheed Martin here, right? We don't have Northrop. We don't have Leonardo Defense Systems, some of the stuff you guys do. And it's difficult to do. So, and we'll talk about this more with the WDIC, but there are barriers to entry to it. And I think we've got some things that we want to do. We need to come together, to do that. Outside the state or the federal government, we're going to have to push the noodle until that intent is brought into Code of Federal Regulations or codified in some other way at the federal and state government. And mostly this is federal we're talking about. So right now we're pushing the noodle a little. And I'm sorry for my candidness, but as a small business owner, this is the way I see it. And I want these technologies to get out there. My technology would speed up sensor to shooter, so like 1,000th of a second in a radar system equates to so many meters, right? You could pick up a ballistic missile, or an aircraft. And this is good stuff, but it's just hard to do nowadays.
Well,
Sorry about the candid perspective, but we'll talk about it a little more with the WDIC.
Can I add to that, too?
Of course, yes.
So from the university perspective, first of all, I want to mention, I don't know, Derek, if you're aware, that I worked 21 years at your facility there, Leonardo DRS.
I didn't know you were there.
Yeah.
I knew we partnered with you significantly.
Yeah, no, I did. I worked with you guys for most of my career. Wow. And so I've been in the defense industry with the exception of 3 years working for Miller Electric, my entire career. And I consider that I'm still am, because I'm doing work with, with the Navy, the Office of Naval Research, Naval Surface Warfare Center, and naval facilities, some of these other organizations. So, but my perspective on this, I'm looking at what our role is, and a big part of it is workforce development to be able to support, and I'll probably come back to that theme. In order for us to have a sufficient number of graduate students, and this is both master's and PhD, we really rely upon industry support, first of all. And we have, through GRAPES, a way to get industry support, and DRS is one of our major supporters. And in addition, we talk about the facilities, because we need facilities. When I came to academia, it was the goal to help bridge the valley of death between the research, and I've lived in that valley of death, was living it my whole career. And so in order to do that, and we work in the power and energy area, we need facilities where we can do at-scale testing and things like that. And we've made great strides there. We've received financial help, significant, and donations in equipment from Leonardo DRS. We've received the same from Eaton Corporation. We've received through our GRAPES organization, we can do plus-up grants where they can contribute to the building up of, say, the facility, so that we can do testing. And the key thing is we need to be able to do it in a safe environment, and it's part of training the students. But if we have what we have that's very unique in Wisconsin is a strong industrial base and base of original equipment manufacturers. And in order for, they cannot alone contribute what would be sufficient to have the type of facilities we need and to maintain them. And so this is where the local and the federal government could play a role. We've had challenges getting them interested in that, and our congressional representatives, for example, who are over areas where, some of our two major supporters, Leonardo DRS and Eaton, where their facilities are. We want to be able to get them together and to be able to see what we're doing with them, and how we're contributing to their workforce. My last two PhD graduates work for Leonardo DRS. So to me, that's a huge success. And so I think that we want the state and local government to see the value that the universities provide to building industry up in this area, and especially in the defense area.
So my next question is, in light of things taking place overseas in Iran, how do you think that's influencing defense infrastructure and future jobs within this scope of conversation?
I'll just add my perspective as a worker in the defense world. So I was involved in new business and bids and proposals, as well as integrating large systems, things like that. In times of active war, it seemed like the research money was less, to support these efforts. And I think that if we're going to go into, when we're not in those times, there are ways, there's more money available to help industry, kind of public-private partnerships, you know, to accelerate technologies together, there's more money for that. So I think when you go into this, a wartime scenario, then the industries, the only way to really kind of keep up that same momentum is that industries probably have to pick up more in terms of internal R&D. But
And I think that depends also on what the budget is. So if the current administration is recommending, at least currently, a significant increase into the defense budget, so hopefully we wouldn't see a downturn in the research side or the research funding that comes along with it. But that's just a recommendation. It's not an approved thing. But as far as industry investment, industry, as usual, follows where the money goes. So if there is an increased budget, or if the focus maintains, industry will invest to increase research and development. I know Leonardo DRS has had a significant increase in research and development, as you know, we're driving to grow the organization and grow the business, so we are investing in the business as much as possible. That includes not only research and development programs, but also investment in capital. The facility that we have out in Menominee Falls is very new from a DoD or aerospace and defense business perspective, because it's only 4 years old. But we're investing in other locations across the U.S. to build the business. So we also partner with, as Dr. Kusner noted, we partner significantly with research and development facilities, primarily around solving the problems that we have. So it's not necessarily open research, but there's a lot of interesting problems that the GRAPES organization has helped us solve over the years. So we really appreciate that as well.
Yeah, I'll be the pessimist again. So from my perspective, so I've seen 25 years of war, and it depends what segment you're in industry. Electronics manufacturing is not seeing an uptick. So we used to have 2,000 printed circuit board shops in the United States, about 2,000. We're down to 150. And there's 2 potentially, coming up, with a foundation this year, which will take about 4 years. So I bring that up because this is where the government could help a little, maybe the state or the federal. So we had the CHIPS Act for semiconductor, but 92% of printed circuit boards are being sourced in China and brought here, and then going into the systems that are going to protect us. So it's a bit of a dichotomy. So you got to follow the money, but there's no money coming in for the government for that. CHIPS Act did a little bit, but on a printed circuit board side, and it's all connected, right? Electronics are all connected. You need a good board and a good semiconductor populating it, but we're not seeing it on electronics. And we used to have we had a great shop here. I don't know if everyone ever heard of Electrotech in Oak Creek. They closed the doors. And they were an incredible shop as far as the technology and investing. So it goes both ways, but it goes really with the money. And then I bring this back up because it goes with the regulatory or Code of Federal Regulations, what the government's going to do. And eventually, the primes and the tier 1s and tier 2s are like, hey, you're going to pay a little more here in the U.S., or are we willing to invest that, protect our technology, protect our IP? And that's the dichotomy that I see. So no offense against Leonardo or anyone else, but they're buying their stuff from China for the most part, right? And it comes at a cost, and can't raise good people if that's happening. So we'll come into some of the solutions or recommendations here in a minute, I think, when we talk WDIC.
Yeah, I can see both sides of that argument. I mean, if you're paying attention to the news, right, you've heard about rare earth issues that we have for magnetics, which is a big source for us, being sourced out of Asia and China in particular. There's the shortage of memory chips that's coming about now because the data centers are chewing up a lot of the bandwidth as far as manufacturing goes. So it is a struggle, rebuilding capacity. We've let things, certain areas atrophy, and I can give an example. If you go back 20 years, 25 years to the Iraq War, that that when the DoD is in an engagement or when we are in a war, all focus kind of shifts there. And one of the net effects of that was, because of that war was so extended, is it let the naval side of the DoD atrophy. And now there's been a big push over the last 10 years to rebuild that whole infrastructure. And as a similar example to your PWA example, there used to be, I want to say, over 5,000 suppliers that supported the Navy, 20, 30 years ago, at the end of the Cold War. And I could have the magnitude wrong, but we're at 1/10 of that. So it might have been 50,000 suppliers, and now we're down to 5,000 suppliers. But just letting the industrial base atrophy is a real problem when we get, I don't want to say distracted, but when we get significantly focused on one particular aspect of national defense.
General Latinsky, can you explain what the Wisconsin Defense Industry Council is and what its mission is?
Yeah, so I'm new to it, and we're trying to rebuild this a little bit. But right now we have 3 core mission sets. Number 1 is advocacy, and it's tough to do that without a what or a how. So we're reworking that a little bit. And then probably the more important 2 are resourcing and networking. So what we're doing here today, and this is great because I'm connecting with 2 great gentlemen here, is trying to figure out how to resource some of this stuff or provide the forcing functions. And sir, you came up with some great ones, Doc, with what you guys are doing. We're going to connect. But the networking is probably the most important. We've probably got 11 different organizations doing 11 different things that are all interconnected. And I think that's what we need to do, most importantly, to connect all the organizations. If you're a veteran, you could get help, and you could get mental health riding a horse, painting, doing this, and every organization is raising money. It's the same thing we need to do here, right, in the state. We acknowledge we'll never bring, like I said earlier, Lockheed Martin or Northrop Grumman or whoever else back into the state. But our intent, the direction we're going, is to build that ecosystem. Figure out what we have, right, and then what the requirements are, and bring folks in together. Because that's the way the government works. They're like, here's the requirement. Do you have the capacity and resources to do this? So I think that's the approach we're going to go down. And there's pockets of excellence. I know shipbuilding, we were really good in the past, and there's a lot of great tool and die shops in this state as well that aren't doing a lick of stuff, right? And they could do a lot of good stuff. So that's where we got to take an approach and take a step back and figure out what the government requirements are, what we have, what the gaps are, and go forward as a unified organization. And if it's not WDIC, I think we would subvert to whoever's in charge of it. But I think it's the WDIC, the Wisconsin Defense Industry Council, that should be doing this. So to give you perspective, I don't know if you know, but Wisconsin ranks in the top 10. I think, someone correct me if I'm wrong, top 10 every year for manufacturing. Per capita, GDP, whatever stat you want to look at. Number 2? We're 30th on the defense side. That's a huge gap. And we're going to try to figure out to go from, how to go, and it's got to be incremental steps once we do this analysis. And it's only by doing things like this and connecting together and having a unified mission statement or unity of effort that we do it. And I'm hearing good stuff right here, not just on the industry side. I'm talking the academia side, the business side. And when you do that, industry will come, and then the government, the government will come. We've got to prove ourselves a little bit too. And nobody knows we're out there. We don't have a military base here, right? Ohio hardly has anything, but they got Wright-Patterson, Air Force Base. And they're doing R&D, and they're doing a lot of good stuff there, right? With aeronautics as well. Fort McCoy's not going to do it. You don't have businesses outside the gate at Fort McCoy, right? Except Shoney's and Quick Trip, and VFW, if you've been up there. Because there's nothing to draw there. It's big area to do stuff. There's nothing on technology there, for the most part. So, but that's what we're trying to do. It's sticky and it's an amoeba right now, but I promise this group, you'll see a revamping of what we're trying to do to create that unity of effort, within the state and all the organizations, with partners.
That's a great segue to my next question for Dr. Kuzner. In university research, how does UWM or other universities research help the defense infrastructure, and how might that adapt to future needs?
Well, let me start by giving you an example.
Can we use my example?
Yeah.
I'm bringing my circuit board chemistry into your place. We're going to work on that together.
Well, we need a board supplier that's in the U.S.
We'll get you a board supplier.
Awesome. We're connected
We'll
here.
connect. We got one right up the block.
Yeah,
We'll get
I
you.
like that a lot. Yeah, it's working. I think networking is great. I'm on a project now supported by the Office of Naval Research, and the reason for this project is to bring some technology in which ONR has invested for, I'd say, probably 20 years, to a high enough technical readiness level to where it can be deployed into ship applications. Okay, so there's 11 universities involved. Now, it has to do with a program called the Power Electronic Building Block, or PEB program. And interestingly, when I was at Leonardo DRS, that kind of philosophy for how you build equipment that's how we do it. And I was a big pusher of that when I was there. We weren't, and at the time, and I've seen this evolve over the years, ONR was really investing in more basic research things, and it takes a lot of effort to try to get it from that level to integrating it into a ship power distribution system. So that's what we have kind of an accelerated program among 11 universities, and some of them have been receiving significant money, the developers of the hardware, but they're pretty disconnected from what the ship environment is and what the requirements are and things like that. So I've kind of had this role of bridging that gap, and we have now more significant funds than I've ever had to deal with before coming in, potentially. And I'm going to need a lot of help because we're basically going to be kind of demonstrating a miniature process of taking a building block and bringing it to a shipboard compatibility level. We have a strong partnership with the University of Arlington. And for those of you who don't know this, tomorrow they're having a ribbon cutting ceremony. You aware of that at all? Yeah. Yeah, for their new land-based test site for ship systems. And Secretary Hesketh may even be there. Okay, he was asked, of course, that with everything going on that might not happen, but there are a lot of people there. The guy that's running that is my partner, and we're building a demo that we're going to be delivering equipment to. Now, in order for us to, I talked a little bit about workforce development and a little bit about facilities, but data security is a big issue with working with universities. And so Dr. Abedi, our Vice Chancellor, has pushed an initiative, and we're having great success to get us to a CMMC level 2 for data security. So that is on the horizon. And that is going to make it'll be possible for us to do controlled unofficial information level research, which is actually what we need to do to really flourish in this endeavor that we're involved in right now. Without that, we would have to piggyback off of our partner at Florida State University, where they have the Center for Advanced Power Systems, and which is really the Navy's major university level lab. So anyway, in all of this, I think that the role that I've seen University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee can really play is because we are located in a very strong area where there's a lot of manufacturing. And the other thing is, if I can attract students into my program that are local, they don't want to leave the state. So we need more, we can probably get out of the state, more out-of-state support for what we're working than in-state support. But then it's harder for them to, draw upon our students because they don't want to leave. And so I think that it's important to be able to have this. So what we're trying to do, trying to address this, and at the same time, having this CMMC2 level environment allows us to also do what universities need to do, which is basic research simultaneously, because we need to be able to work internationally. We have the bulk of the PhD students that come into U.S. schools are international students. And so we see a way, and we're working very carefully to be able to manage those environments simultaneously and draw upon the best talent and partition the efforts that we're doing between the basic research and what we would call, controlled information research. So we can do both. And I think that there was one last thing I wanted to say, yes, that I think this also is going to facilitate us working with industry, because we have in place the way to control their IP, which is a lot stronger than just getting NDAs in place and things like that, which are very human managed, So I think those are some of the key things that we're doing right now.
Excellent. You segued into my next question as well. And we may be preaching to the choir with your responses, but how does this research and defense infrastructure benefit the public and industry at large?
I could take it.
Yeah, go for it.
So there's probably students of history and technology in here, but almost every major technology from the GPS system, right? Radar, GPS system, and what we have today is from Department of War, and then Department of Defense, now Department of War again. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to use an example, and I didn't realize you do this, but we built a flow battery with Lockheed Martin for a military installation, using our chemistry. And it's huge scale, but it would power the entire Fort Carson, Colorado. It was a big grand opening last year. And they figured out how to do this for households as well with a flow battery that would last probably about 30 years. Much more efficient than solar, on the grid, and, or taking solar, putting it into batteries, much more efficient and so forth. So that'd be benefiting every resident, all right? The thing I told you about sensor to shooter, for a circuit board, you could pick up a radar or a missile, a radar could pick up a missile or something else, but think about that same technology being used in an automobile and your brake system. So 1,000th of a second is about 36 feet. So I think you'd want that for your children, for that automatic system to break 1,000th of a second sooner, right, and prevent them from getting hurt or something catastrophic happening. Those types of technologies, I think, happen all the time from the Department of War, and they're translated to industry or through industry to consumers. So those are two examples I've seen, and I'm sure there's many more out there.
Yeah, there's hundreds of examples of things that the military or the DoD had done or DOW had done that translated into everyday usage. Wristwatches were originally a military thing for World War I. So the amount of things that translate, microwaves. were an offshoot of radars that was DoD. As far as today goes, the research that UWM is doing today is going to be the products that you guys see in your houses in 10, 20 years. So the DoD just happens to be the test bed where we make these things work. We just make them work in very extreme situations, and that's why you can roll it out to the public afterwards, and it's a non-issue. I would fully support that the investment that the country makes, that the Department of War makes into research and development is key into everyday life that we have here. There's specific examples in our products alone that have to do, you might not fully grasp it, but when you burn off power, you have to do it really quickly when you have an electrical propulsion system. That same power burn off is what you do when you have a braking system in an electric car. So they use that same technology in the braking systems of electric cars. So it just takes time for that research to filter into the everyday life.
Yeah, I'd like to address the grid side of this. So a lot of what I've done in my career is trying to make power electronic conversion equipment be able to interact in a compatible way with distribution grids, where you'd have we would call a kind of a soft grid. That's what a ship is, for example, because you just have a limited amount of generators installed there, and they're distributed around, and then we're using power electronics to enhance make the grid more survivable in particular, and more flexible, and being able to help integrate energy storage into the whole system. So when I went into academia and I had a goal, I said, well, can we start to make land-based grids look like this? And what technologies could be developed? And it's becoming clear now to me. And I want to mention, you mentioned homes, okay? And one of the first things I tried to do when I went into academia was develop a concept for a neighborhood microgrid, and this was in parts of Milwaukee where they had a lot of foreclosed, abandoned homes. And so we had a partner that had access to those properties, and they're actually the ones that kind of pushed me into it in the beginning. But it was kind of maybe a bit ahead of its time. And I spent I submitted many proposals to try to get this off the ground, and we were certain that people in those neighborhoods, it wouldn't have worked in a neighborhood like in Waukesha where I live, but it definitely was going to work in Milwaukee neighborhoods, and they were all in, but we couldn't get sufficient funding, and so I kind of defaulted back to the Navy world again. But that experience taught me a few things, and one of the key things is we call like grid edge devices. And really my focus on electrical power is to make it more survivable. And so if we've done work with on military bases to try to develop a concept which is heavily informed by the way they distribute power on the electric ships today. It's a kind of a zonal distribution system where they align protection of like circuit breaker protection with damage control protection. And so I had a program with Naval Postgraduate School and went on. It was probably my most successful program. And we were working on military bases over in Spain and Italy and looking at that. We had a SBIR with a local company here, Badger Technologies, to do one at Wright Air Force Base. But getting this technology is tough to get across. There's a lot of opportunities for industry to contribute, okay, to developing this technology and deploying it. I think right now, with some changes in the priorities of the federal government, so I've lost all federal support for anything that has to do with land-based resilience. And so, so we need to find, I think one way I'm pursuing right now is working with small businesses like Badger Technologies and some other companies to try to go after, kind of repurpose this to make the grid more hardened to what's going on, you know, and help the modernization of the grid. So, but there's a lot of technology coming out of this that we can, it comes from the university. It's enabled by research that was done through Department of Defense, through DOD.
Thank you. We want to leave some time for some question and answers. So Jeff, if you'd like to come up.
No, you can stay
Oh,
there.
you just take the mic?
I'll just roam around with the
Oh,
mic. So anybody have any questions, statements, perspectives that you want to add? Go ahead. Wait a minute, Brian.
Okay.
Want to mic you up, man. Go.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Major General Latinsky, is it? You talked about the circuit board, and you weren't able to get through the Valley of the Death. Or what was the impediment there? Was it a lack of validation? Can the universities help in that?
Bureaucracy.
Okay, and then I guess I wanted to ask Derek from your side. The requirements flow down. Now, your shipboard electronics may not benefit from that millisecond or microsecond, but in the case of what would it take for you to spec, to be required to spec that board? How would that work between your organizations? Because you're putting circuit boards in a lot of equipment, and you want to put those circuit boards in. Could you educate us a little bit on that process and the interface? I'd be curious from both sides.
No, go ahead. I've worked for the Gs at the World Tour. I'd love to hear what Derek has to say, and I'd love to get out of the Valley of Death.
I mean, my opinion, I guess, is that the Navy has a desire change, but has no desire to change, but no mechanism to do so. So the safest thing to do is, if something works, if something's not broke, don't fix it. Which means bringing in new technology that's more efficient, that isn't fixing a problem that's broke, is very difficult. We have similar situations with all different kinds of technology, not only printed circuit boards. When you talk about laser welding's been around forever. I mean, for a long enough time that we should be able to use it, but there's no clear path right now to get laser welding certified in the Navy. So those kinds of things
laser welding's incredible too compared to what we do. I have all kinds of customers that do that. The mil spec, the military specification, that needs to be changed on a piece of Department of War material. And again, I'm getting into bureaucracy. It's a lot easier to just flow with it and not change something and do what we've always been doing. It's 100% bureaucracy, in my opinion. And we're seeing that with a basic change of water, deionized water, right? And I've tried this with my chemistry. It requires an act of Secretary of War, right? It's a lot to go through, and we're trying to get faster. And I think, like you said, Derek, they're trying to figure it out, how to speed this up. But it's just tough in bureaucracy, which is good for a lot of things, right? We don't have overthrowing of government. But with technology like this, the folks that are winning, in my opinion, are just the folks that see something that they're looking forward ahead of the government. I was in the government. I was in the Pentagon. So you're going to need this technology, and they demonstrate it, and then it's off-the-shelf stuff that's bought from industry.
The flip side of the challenge that we have with getting new technology inserted into products is that the reason there's resistance is because, again, back to if it's not broke, don't fix it. The reason it's a challenge is because we know that the products that we produce for the U.S. Navy are the best in the world, and you don't want to have anything potentially call that into question. So there's a big hurdle to overcome, and the way that you know that is through an enormous amount of documentation. So to change something is what would seem to be as small as a PWA drawing, flows up through layers and layers and layers of customers all the way to the government. And that change comes with a cost to every one of those steps. So it's just a big hurdle. I mean, again, it will happen over time. It just takes, it's the valley of death. It takes a very long time.
Right, that's why the WDIC thing is such a, if you think about it, a long-term effort. It's not something that you can just.
It's gonna outweigh me, right, and outlive me, and that's what we're trying to do, and we're gonna do it in this state.
So I was at DIBCON last week, and a big topic of conversation there is a workforce question. So we're number 1 and 2 for manufacturers. Primes, tier 1s are on the coast. People are trying to, like, and the CMMC certification is $40,000 to $200,000. It's expensive. How are
$140,000 for a small business.
insane?
Right? If you've got a $2 million business out there somewhere, 6 employees, it's a big cost.
So one of my questions is, how are we able to connect the Midwest supply chain of capacity to the primes out east and get through that security? Because obviously I'm in the world of risk management and insurance. Security is very important, but it can't be that big of a barrier to entry. Like, I'm trying to think how you guys are navigating that. There's a lot of tension, and then you add in there's a shrinking workforce, but we're trying to increase contracts. Like, it's a very half-baked question. My mind is blown right now. I'm just trying to see how you guys are navigating that.
Well, I'll my response is probably half-baked as well. The issue that I see is that we are somewhat, the industry is risk averse. How that presents itself is, Dr. Kusner talked about controlled unclassified information, CUI. A spec comes out from the government, it's marked CUI. That gets flowed down to the prime. The prime says, okay, everything that's associated with this contract is now CUI, right? And then, so that gets down to tier 2, tier 3 suppliers. They do the same thing out of risk aversion, right? Hey, to be safe, we better mark everything CUI. So now the tier 2, tier 3 is doing the same thing, pushing it down to their suppliers. So they need to have the certification, the NIST certification. And their documentation needs to be controlled because we marked the document CUI. Now, that's not bad per se, but because we do it in a risk-averse way, we mark everything. And do we need to challenge ourselves in evaluating every piece of equipment as CUI? So if I need to build a bracket, right? I want to build a bracket. I think we might have talked about this last week, right? If I need to build a bracket, now I have to find a machine shop that's big enough that can afford to get NIST certified, but still give me the cheapest price possible on a bracket that sits in a larger piece of equipment, that sits in a larger piece of equipment, but because we're somewhat risk averse, we take that approach and mark it CUI. Now, the DoD's approach in acquisition and changing acquisition is trying to push some of that challenge some of that approach, right? They're saying, okay, well, let's get commercial equipment in here faster. Let's find a way to do it. We'll look at potentially, I don't want to say waiving requirements, but we'll look at, do we really need to levy those requirements on every piece of equipment? I'm not sure exactly what that is. Yeah.
Okay, here's a question from Wade.
Yeah, in terms of contractors, and Ernie, you alluded to some of the primes, how have you seen the space evolve over the past few years with the emergence of the neo-primes? Kind of that cross-section of hardware and software of manufacturing and technology.
Define what you mean.
Neo-prime being SpaceX, Palantir, Anduril, and Jeff, since he asked me to clarify, I can't help but to follow up. WMC, our organization, put out a report 2 months ago. We call it the Wisconsin Competitiveness Report. Ernie, you mentioned Ohio and some of the defense spending in Ohio. And Palmer Luckey, the founder of Anduril Industries, had a great quote on why they chose Ohio for $1 billion capital investment. And he said, some states pull you in and speed you up. Other states push you away and slow you down. So as we're crisscrossing the state talking about our Wisconsin competitiveness report, that's the question I'm asking. Are we going to be a state that pulls you in or a state that pushes you away? And on Happy Tax Day, when we're in the top 11 in property tax, sales tax, and corporate income tax, I think we're a state that pushes away. So just a little bit of commentary.
Kurt will be happy you did that. Okay, so there's a couple questions there about the business climate environment. That's one. Is Wisconsin receptive to these kind of jobs and making the pathway easier? And then the neoprimes, what role can they play?
I'm not sure on the neoprimes, but here's my take. Those people are insanely crazy and intellectually smart and do it their way, and they're not pushing the noodle. They're disrupting. And they have disruptive technologies, and they're one of a kind in our generation, is my opinion. So that one, to me, is an outlier from a normal structured C Corp or LLC or S Corp or something larger out there, trading publicly. I personally think it's an outlier. Incredibly good outlier. We're doing business with SpaceX, and it's a lot easier to do business there than it is with other folks for that reason.
I don't know that I have a good answer for that one. My view is that those businesses are chasing information, not necessarily tax rates in a particular location. They want the information because they're going to use the information to try and make better decisions. So they're going to go wherever the information is. But I'm not really sure what the implications of our tax rates are on their decision to come here per se.
Can I say something about, I want to talk about that and risks, the neoprime and the risk. I think it's kind of I think the biggest risk, and of course I come at this from higher power stuff, okay, not as circuit boards and lower things, but the risk is in developing new technologies that are really going to be game changers that require multidisciplinary understanding of how to build them, that are going to be able to be adapted to a wide range of requirements. And requirements are not just a thing of the military. European environment markets are really good at enforcing regulations. And so I think that understanding how to build equipment that can meet standards is important, and being able to build new technology. And I'll give you a couple examples. Solid-state circuit breaker, okay? There's some incredible capabilities that could be enabled by that, but it's been almost dead in the water for 10 years as far as being, adoptable commercially. And so the neoprime concept, it seems to me there's a lot of focus on AI-based, AI kind of software-based type technology, okay? And there's not enough focus on where the rubber really hits the road. That's my feeling. We're trying to do our best to address it. Through great pain, we have a electromagnetic compatibility test and characterization facility that we are going to have up and running. That we want to. That's where you run into a lot of risk. So we're going to have that up and running by next year. We're in part, we have parts of it running today. We have an anechoic chamber. We'll have the capability of testing high voltage, high power. When I say high voltage, up to say 2,000 volts, and equipment. So we need to train students how to do it, and we need to train students how to design to meet requirements. So that's a big focus. And these are how I see how we're going to de-risk things. And we've got to take initial risk by investing. Sometimes just, and the universities play a role. And I think UWM plays a role, but frankly, they're struggling financially, okay? And I think I'd just say that we know what's happened with the university system over the years, you know, and we're trying to keep our tax rates down, and some universities are able to flourish in this environment, but others, it's hit hard, and a lot of it is tied to population, right? People stopped having kids 20 years ago, so universities have been hit over the entire country by that. We've got to get through this gap somehow and not lose what's important, you know, to our state. So I think that we can play a big role at the university level to mitigate a lot of these real risks that I'm talking about, you know, if we can stay in the game here.
All right, well, I think our time is up, but I think that's a good way to end it. So I want to thank our panel, Derek Van Zydam, Dr. Rob Kusner, and Ernie Latinsky of the WDIC, and of course, Yolanda Medina, Marine Corps vet, and Director of the Military and Veterans Resource Center at UWM. So thanks, UWM, and our Milwaukee sponsors for being part of this event, and we'll see you next time.